Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, whatever day it is, I hope that this topic is of interest to you. It must be because you clicked on it. It's a very special day for me to consider and to honor by giving you some recommendations for books today about veterans. My dad was a World War II veteran, as many of you know, and I have some other veterans in my family from other wars. And I just am always thinking about this topic and what we can learn from their experiences and how to keep their stories and memories alive, both in fiction and in nonfiction. So it's something that I enjoy reading about, even though it's a difficult topic. And I'm moved by the stories of veterans, whether they are fictional or non-fictional. So I thought I would take this time today to tell you about a few that I own that I haven't yet gotten through and a few that I have, and see if they're of interest to you or maybe to someone that you care about. You know, this is the time of year when we're looking at gifts for people for the holiday season. And so some of these may be books that you want to consider gifting to someone that you care about that is also interested in the life of veterans and the experiences that they've had over the years in a variety of different settings and conflicts. So let's get started. So we'll start with the fictional novels, two of which I have read and one I have not yet read. So we'll talk about those first, and then we'll get to the nonfiction category. So one of the ones I read really recently is The Life We Bury by Alan Eskins. I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I had seen Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library talk about it. My daughter had read it, and I had forgotten that she had also read it. And so when I found it I think I listened to it on audio first. And when I found it there, I was really excited about reading it, and it did not disappoint. I gave it 4 stars. So this is the story of a college student named Joe Talbert, and he's assigned as a part of one of his classes to interview an older person and to learn their story and write about it. And so he ends up going to a long-term care facility where he lives in the upper northeast part of the United States, I think in Boston or somewhere around that area. The long-term care facility is kind of reticent to give him access to one of their residents, but they allow him to talk to or see if a resident would talk to him, and his name is Carl. And Carl has a story that is quite unique and profound and heartbreaking. And he was a Vietnam War veteran, and at some point in this novel he describes what happened to him. Well, that is not the main story or focus of this novel. It is a really important plot piece, and it was really one of the things that made this story deeper and richer for me, and also helped to propel the plot of this novel in a way that I found very, very satisfying. So I do recommend this. I just recently acquired the other novel that he's written, but that's a spoiler alert for my November haul, so don't tell anybody. So I've talked about Life After Life a lot, and I do love that book, as many of you know, one of my all-time favorites in my lifetime. And this one is a great favorite too, and that is A God in Ruins. This is not a sequel, it's a standalone, and yet if you've read Life After Life, it will enhance that experience. This is the story of Teddy, who is the brother of the main character in Life After Life. And Teddy was a veteran. He was Ursula's younger brother, and he ended up being, I can't remember if he was drafted or enlisted in the war, and he's a pilot. And this novel tells his story during the war and after. It is, as Kate Atkinson often does, a dual timeline plot, which also goes back and forth. So it is not always seamless and easy for some people to read and follow. I really enjoyed hearing Teddy's story, and of all of the characters that Kate Atkinson could have picked up for another novel from Life After Life, Teddy is my favorite. I would love to see her at one point expand onto some of the other characters, but there was just so much richness here, so much connection to Teddy's life after the war, and I don't want to spoil anything, so just suffice it to say it's great. It's great, and it's a lovely story about the experience of a pilot in the war in England, in World War II in England, and how he came back after and acclimated back into his life at home. And this one is one I have not read. It's on my shelf, and I would like to prioritize this. I say that about a lot of books, but so the question is when and how. But this is Black Cross by Greg Iles. I did a whole TBT, I think, on Greg Iles, or a whole something about Greg Iles one day in another video. But this one, I'm going to kind of read it a little bit because I'm not familiar with it and I may forget. But January 1944, Allied troops are preparing for D-Day, which happens that year. Nazi scientists develop a toxic nerve gas that will repel and wipe out any invasion force. To salvage the planned assault, two vastly different but equally determined men are sent to infiltrate the secret concentration camp where the poison gas is being perfected on human subjects. Their only objective is to destroy all traces of the gas and the men who created it, no matter how many lives may be lost, including their own. Yeah, I've heard really exciting reviews about this from people that I know. This is, I think, the only novel. No, I don't think that's true. I think he's written another novel about this particular era in history. I saw him speak in person a few years ago now. And when he did, there were many things I remember about that conversation. But when he did, he talked about one of some of the things that for a writer are most important to them, sort of milestones or ways that they feel as though they've kind of made it or really feel good about their work. And one of the things he said was that one of those days was when he realized that this book was featured in the World War II museum in the shops as a book that people must read. A book of fiction that people must read about World War II. And that made him really feel like he had done this amazingly great thing in writing this book. So I bought it. So I may put this on my list for December or January. I would like to get to this. December would be also a good month to read this. So yeah, that's a possibility for sure. Because, if I didn't have to work and clean my house and that would be about it. If I didn't have to work and clean my house, I would get so much more reading done. How about you? Another piece of fiction that you might want to consider is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I got this from my daughter Megan in the Advent Book Exchange last Christmas, and this is one that I haven't gotten to yet. This is, while a novel, it was featured in the series called The Vietnam War by Ken Burns, and I think her name was Lynn Novick. Let me look. I think it says. Yeah, Lynn Novick. I didn't watch that series, but I have watched some others that Ken Burns has produced, and they're amazing. And usually on PBS, and you can usually watch them again in a variety of ways. But nevertheless, this book was featured there, and it follows the story of men in the Vietnam War. It's American literature, and it really talks about what they physically and emotionally and mentally had to carry through their experience as soldiers in that war. That was one of the most difficult wars, I think. I mean, all war is very difficult, but in the Vietnam War in particular, there were things that happened there that maybe hadn't happened in other wartime experiences. It's tricky, difficult subject matter, and yet really important. I remember as a child watching footage of the Vietnam War and understanding what was happening. And I was very, very young. And So understanding what was happening as far as I could at that age, and being profoundly impacted by that and by the sadness in the United States and in my family. And this is really an important piece for me to get to too. And it's not very long. It's a really short one. Okay, let's get to the nonfiction. I have 3 of those today. And one of them is one that I've actually seen the adaptation, but never finished reading this, or never started or finished reading this book. And that is The Monuments Men by Robert Edsel. Also co-written with Brett Witter. I think part of it was written by him. It is the story of some soldiers who were sent on a mission to recover art that was being held. Hitler was collecting art and storing it in warehouses. And they had collected it from Jews that they had taken to concentration camps and taken their homes. They had methodically gone into churches, homes, other museums, anywhere that they could take this art and store it so that they could make money on it and have this profound a bit of wealth. And so this follows a group of American and British museum directors, curators, and historians called the Monuments Men, who are commissioned to go out and find this art, authenticate it, and then hopefully take it back for their countries. It stars Bill Murray and George Clooney and Kate Blanchett. Trying to remember, John Goodman, Matt Damon, lots of great actors. And it's a great movie adaptation. But again, I haven't ever read the book, so I can't say if it's a great book, but it's a very important piece of history that a lot of people never knew anything about. One that really interests me. Allied Heroes, Nazi Thieves, and the Greatest Treasure Hunt in History. That's a great subtitle for this book. And then the next 2 that I have are very heavy, and they're actually written by the same author. And so if you're looking for an author who is sort of well known for his work and research and nonfiction pieces on World War II, Stephen Ambrose is definitely a super detailed, well-researched writer who's no longer with us, but left a legacy of amazing work on this subject. And so one of the ones that I have is D-Day, June 6, 1944, the climactic battle of World War II. That was important to me because my dad was involved in this battle. Indeed, on D-Day, he came in at Normandy at Omaha Beach. And so that's important for me to read and to understand what his experience was, even though I have read some of it. This one is a large one. I have not gotten to this. The appendix and the endnotes themselves cover about 100 pages, I would say, but this is 583 pages long, very detailed. When I will get to this, I don't know, but I like having it on my shelf so that I have that option to get there when I'm ready. And another one that I got actually at the World War II Museum is Citizen Soldiers, which the subtitle is The U.S. Army from the Normandy Beaches to the Bulge to the Surrender of Germany. And my dad was actually also at the Battle of the Bulge. So this really kind of follows his journey of the war, how he came in and where he went. He was really have his discharge papers, so I know exactly where he went throughout until his discharge. And so this is important to me. And what's, I guess, fascinating to me too is that because of the nature of World War II and the rapid deployment and drafting of soldiers to the battles, to the strategic places that they needed to be in order to fight this war, they weren't trained in ways that other soldiers may have been trained over time. And they were everyday guys who left their jobs and who left their businesses. And I'm not saying that other soldiers are not citizen soldiers in the same space, but this is kind of the premise of how prepared were they and how young they were in many cases, but how prepared were they to go forward into this experience. And it was a very long war. It was a very challenging climate and challenging conditions for them to fight in. So this one is acclaimed, well known, and highly recommended by World War II historians. And so I got this one. This one is a little bit shorter. I mean, not tremendously, but 486, 485, something like that. One day I'll get to this, but it's, again, just nice having it for when I'm ready. I have the great fortune of living near the World War II Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so I have been a member of that museum for several years. I may have said this before, and I get to visit. I was actually supposed to go a few weekends ago, and then we had the storm and we had to cancel our trip, but I'm able to go. My dad has a brick there that we purchased as a family, and we not only honor him every time we go there, but we learn something new every time we go there, and we engage in sort of a memory and honoring of those people, men and women who fought, and women who kept things, the home fires burning here in the United States, as they say, the women who kept things happening during this time here and kept businesses open and kept products and ammunition and other things going so that we could continue to do what we were doing where we had deployed our soldiers. So it's an amazing space to go to and visit and go through. If you've never been there, I really, really recommend that you go there. There's a lot to do in New Orleans. A lot of people come to New Orleans for Bourbon Street and the Quarter and the drinking and the music. And I get that. I did that when I was younger too. But the World War II Museum is an amazing place for you to go. And I highly recommend that as well. So kudos to them for all that they do for keeping those stories alive for everyone who wants to learn about them and to see the artifacts that they've collected. Okay, guys, that is my Veterans Day list of books that I would recommend, whether I've read them or not. I highly recommend them, and I plan to get to them at some point, someday in my life, maybe when I'm not working and cleaning house anymore. I don't know. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you spend some time honoring the veterans in your life on Veterans Day. And as always, happy reading. Bye.